Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the simplest yet hardest to understand topic when it comes to language learning, which is immersion. I'm not only going to talk about why we do immersion, but I'm also going to talk about what it is you actually have to do and give you a physical look at what you should be doing for immersion in your first week on this program. With immersion, it seems simple to understand. You're just reading, watching, and listening to Japanese as much as possible. You might think, oh, I already do that, Gus. I already read Japanese books. I already watch Japanese anime or shows. I already listen to Japanese music or podcasts. You don't need to tell me to do immersion. I'm already doing immersion. And that's where most learners actually get it wrong. Because even though you're reading Japanese books or watching Japanese shows or listening to Japanese music, you might still be in your comfort zone when it comes to your immersion environment. And so on this program, what we're trying to mimic is, well, we're trying to mimic Japan. And so we have to mimic Japan in your home area. So even if you're living in Japan right now, even if you are living with a Japanese person, your home environment, which is everything that you read, watch, or listen to on a daily basis, is probably not 100% in Japanese. In this video, we're going to talk about quality and quantity of your immersion environment, what to actually do, and why we are doing these actions in the first week. Okay, but first, what is immersion? Immersion is when you're reading, watching, and listening to Japanese as much as possible throughout your day. Now, most learners will hear this and actually go straight into beginner learner resources like beginner podcasts for Japanese learners, or beginner TV shows for Japanese learners, or some sort of guided reading that they can do just when they're at home or when they're on the train. However, on this program, as much as possible, I want you to do native level immersion, which means Japanese books made for Japanese people, like this one right here, which is How to Use Your Time. So Japanese books made for Japanese people, Japanese TV shows made for a Japanese audience, and Japanese music or Japanese podcasts not made for learners but made for Japanese audiences mainly. You shouldn't be taking in any materials that are technically made for learners when it comes to your immersion environment. Now, when it comes to learning other things such as the grammar or a certain kanji, you can use made for learner materials. However, in your immersion environment, when we're thinking I'm trying to immerse, it should always be native materials made for native Japanese people. And if you're not doing this, or if you're shying away from this, or you feel like you're uncomfortable taking in native Japanese content from the beginning, then I can't guarantee that you'll actually be able to reach the goal level of Japanese that you want in the time that you want it. In order to get to an advanced level of Japanese fluency within 1 year, you have to take in native contents from the very beginning, no matter what level you're at. So by the end of the first week, the biggest complaint I get from members is that they don't understand anything. Whatever they're watching, it's just white noise to them. The listening that they're doing is also white noise. They can't really understand anything that they're doing. They're looking at the books, for example, and they're not able to read the characters, and that's okay. What matters most is that you keep doing it throughout this program, no matter how crazy or ridiculous it seems that you're listening to something that you don't understand. The reason why this is that your brain is subconsciously picking up on the patterns of the Japanese language. And if you don't have enough exposure to the Japanese language at native level speeds and native level content, you're not going to be able to grow as fast as you'd like, and you certainly won't be able to get to an advanced level of fluency within 1 year. In terms of quality, when it comes to the Japanese language contents that you are taking in, any content is okay as long as it's for a Japanese audience. Now, that being said, if you are more advanced, you may need more specific topics in order to actually push your Japanese to the next level. If that's the case, make sure to talk to me or the coach just so that you have an idea of what content you should be taking in. At the beginner levels, any content in Japanese works. Now let's talk about quantity and how much Japanese immersion you should be doing. For the duration of this program, you should be listening, reading, and watching Japanese as much as possible, as long as you have control over that time. Now, obviously, when you're working or at a family event or in school, or for whatever reason you can't listen or read or watch Japanese because the environment doesn't allow for it, only in those situations is it okay to not be listening, reading, or watching Japanese. Now, what this means is most of your Japanese immersion is going to be passive. So in the first week, if you do nothing else, you should definitely optimize and master your passive listening. So that can be passive listening to YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, podcasts, music, anything at all, as long as you're listening to it while you're doing other actions throughout your day. You can listen while you're doing dishes. You can listen while you're on commutes. If possible, you can listen while you're at work. But ideally, from the time that you wake up to the time that you go to sleep, you should be listening to Japanese. And yes, this means even when you're studying or reading Japanese. Now, in order to stay consistent with this quantity of immersion without burning out, you have to only choose content that is interesting or fun for you. And you have to start your immersion immediately when you wake up, because that sets the tone for the rest of the day and keeps your mind focused on what's important for these 6 or 12 months. Japanese. So what I do for this personally, and what previous members before you have done, is in the morning while you're still trapped in your covers or when you're still getting up from bed, you're still kind of sleepy, that is the best time to actually start your immersion day. And so just to give you some ideas on how you can do this, what I do is I have my computer right by my bed, open it up to a 24/7 Japanese news live stream, while also doing my flashcard reviews. Now this may mean waking up 30 minutes earlier in your day, but if you have that 30 minutes to do the reviews and start your immersion, you can finish all of your chores for Japanese in the morning before the chaos of your day hits. That's how I've been able to stay consistent with Japanese for over 3 years. Now no matter what, some people just can't wake up 30 minutes earlier in the morning, and that's okay. The second best time is when you're about to go to sleep and you're trapped again under the covers in this place of comfort. Now this isn't just my method, but there's actually research out there done by Stephen Krashen that shows if you're more comfortable while studying, you'll actually retain and remember more information, which is why I always recommend being trapped under covers or in this comfortable position when you're studying Anki Droid reviews, rather than stressed or on the go. Now another way that I recommend learners actually implement immersion throughout their day is something that you're probably already doing, which is listening to music or Japanese podcasts while you're going somewhere, either to work, to the grocery store, to school. No matter where you're going, try and listen to Japanese and make it a habit of always listening to Japanese whenever you're going or walking somewhere. It's said that you need 10,000 hours of listening to native Japanese content to actually develop a native Japanese ear. The Japanese that you're hearing right now is probably not the Japanese that Japanese people actually hear. And this leads to you pronouncing things wrong and not being able to hear or understand the Japanese correctly when you're in a speaking situation. Now in the afternoon, or when things start to settle down in your day, already finish your flashcard reviews and studying, and you decide to start studying Japanese, whether that be grammar, adding flashcards or flashcard reviews, make sure that you're listening to Japanese during this time as well. And even if you're reading a book in Japanese, always make sure to have the audiobook playing or something else playing in Japanese as well. So listen to Japanese as much as possible. No matter what you do, make sure that you're immersing in Japanese as much as possible. Make sure it's native Japanese content made for native Japanese speakers. Make sure the content that you're taking in is fun or interesting for you no matter what level you're at. If you're taking in Japanese content because you feel like you have to do it, like you have to listen to the news or you have to listen to this documentary, you will burn out, you will waste time, and you won't reach your Japanese goal. You should never do something for Japanese because you feel like you have to do it, but you should always do the Japanese because you feel like you want to do it. What this means is that you have to spend a good amount of time researching content and researching hobbies and researching topics that are interesting to you as an individual. No matter what content teachers say, no matter what content tutors say, no matter what content coaches say, no matter what content I say, you should always have the final decision as to whether or not this content is fun and interesting for you. Because if it's not, you're just not going to learn. Now that we understand the quantity of Japanese immersion that you should be doing, the quality of Japanese immersion that you should be doing, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts of Japanese immersion. You should be actually focusing on for each part. For listening, you should be focusing on quantity of words, so how many words you're hearing per minute, or how many patterns you're hearing per minute. For watching TV shows, you should always have Japanese subtitles with the Japanese TV show, or no subtitles at all. Never have English subtitles or subtitles that you understand. If you have the Japanese subtitles turned on, you're targeting reading and listening. If you have the Japanese subtitles turned off, you're focusing on how Japanese people naturally sound and naturally speak. And by the way, if you're an advanced learner, you should never have any subtitles on your shows whatsoever. But if you're a beginner or intermediate, you should always have Japanese subtitles on your Japanese shows. Now for reading books, we're targeting grammar and vocabulary through sentences. No matter what type of immersion you're doing, you'll always be trying to understand the meaning above everything else. Now with that being said, you might not know exactly where you should start with immersion if you're just starting out or you've never actually done Japanese immersion at home before. And if this sounds like you, I have provided a resource list for you to get started. If you finish those resources and you still don't know what you should be doing for Japanese content, always choose comedy, history, or psychology for learning Japanese. Now you may be wondering what tools you should be using for your immersion environment. Personally, Personally, for listening, I just use Spotify or Apple Music. For TV, if you're in Japan, you have access to TV-er. If you're not in Japan, I would go to YouTube or any other streaming platform for TV shows. For books, I recommend Amazon Kindle, Aozora Bunko, or Shousetsu o Yomo. If you are taking the JLPT, news might also be a good option, and in that case, you should do NHK, Yomiuri Shimbun, or Yahoo News Japan. I've seen members grow the most doing at least one news article per day alongside regular immersion. Now, in terms of paid tools that you could use, the only current one that I would actually recommend is Migaku, because it adds Japanese subtitles to the shows you watch and can make adding flashcards directly from those shows easier. Another resource like this that's free is Yomitan, which also can make flashcards automatically, but this resource is more for reading. For apps, I would recommend Keitai Shousetsu, and if you enjoy playing games, make sure your game has lots of dialogue and your interface is in Japanese. Finally, if you really want to commit to your Japanese immersion environment and making sure your Japanese is the best it can be by the end of the program, I'd recommend changing all your devices to fully Japanese, even if you're a beginner learner. Now, if you have more questions about immersion or how you can fit more immersion in your day, be sure to reach out to me and ask me your questions or read this guide down below. Also, if you haven't signed up for Migaku yet, you can use our collaboration link to get a discount. Otherwise, that should be enough to get you started with immersion for the first week. I'll see you in the next video.